A Lubbock donut shop is back open after the health department forced it to close and clean up following its latest health inspection. Another donut shop is also at the bottom of the list.
KCBD News Channel 11's Christy Harton joins us with details in this week's edition of Food for Thought. Christy?
Karen and Abner, we have a mixed menu of top and low performers tonight, with both of our low performers serving up the same thing. One of them was closed down because of their violations. Let's take a look.
Rita's Donuts at 2625 50th was forced to temporarily close after health inspectors discovered they did not have the capacity to wash, rinse, sanitize, and air dry contact surfaces of equipment or utensils. Now, that was just one of their 17 violations, but mandatory for service. Here's a look at their priority violations. Kolaches were not at least 135 degrees. The food warmer was not working. The person in charge was not able to answer questions about proper food temperatures. Ready-to-eat sausage did not have a date mark. Raw chorizos was stored above ready-to-eat sauce. Pesticide labeled for household use was in the facility. An employee washed their hands in a 3-compartment sink. The 3-compartment sink was not plumbed correctly, and 2 of the basins were leaking. Equipment was not being sanitized. Utensils and food contact surfaces must be sanitized after cleaning. The person in charge was not able to describe cleaning and sanitizing procedures for food contact surfaces, and there were no sanitizing test strips available. The facility was closed for 24 hours, allowing staff to correct the violations. They have since been re-inspected and allowed to reopen. Rise and Shine Donuts at 6302 Frankfurt had 32 violations. Here's a look at their priority violations. Kolaches were not at least 135 degrees. Kolaches were in containers from another retail store and did not have a date mark. Multiple items were dirty, including food containers, a cutting board, utensils, and bowls. Non-food grade trash bags were used to cover uncooked dough. Cooks cleaned tables, moved around personal items, went outside, and returned to food prep without washing their hands. There were no paper towels at a hand sink. Dough cutters were kept in a metal lunchbox. Lids on a storage bin were cracked. Dishes were not being sanitized. Toxic items were not stored properly. Certified food handler certificates were posted, but they're all expired. The inspector notes, due to the number and the nature of the violations, management did not show proper food safety knowledge. The report shows most of the violations were corrected at the time of the inspection. Now to the good news. Here's a look at this week's top performers. The Nicolette at 511 Broadway and Kona Ice #1 and #2.
You can check out the full list of violations on our website at kcbd.com. Just click on Food for Thought. Karen and Abner, back to you.
Thank you, Christy.